Merry Christmas. Hi, everybody. Everybody good? It's great to see you. Like we're in a real church. Does this make us a real church? I'm not sure if Reunion's a real church yet, but it kind of feels like that. Every year, because we don't have our own home, we kind of bounce around. Last year, we were at film.ca. We kind of rented out the 7 o'clock showtime, if you remember, if you were there. I remember we were setting up, so they showed the matinee, then we hustled in, set everything up for our service, and we had to be out because they were showing a late show in that same movie theater. So I remember after we'd set up, we were just about to begin our gathering, and I came out, and there was like people in the stanchions, and they were just like lined up. I'm like, man, sweet Jesus, people are coming to church. Then we realized Star Wars was playing in the theater next door, and we still had a good group last year, though. That's not to slack last year, but we're so thankful for Chartwell. Chartwell has been good friends to our church. If you know anyone who goes to this church, that this is their home church, and you see them over the break, please say thank you to them. They've been so good to the Reunion family, to me, and so thank you so much for Chartwell. As we were pulling in, my son said to me, he's like, oh, we're at Chartwell tonight. And I said, yeah, because we're driving by film.ca, and he's like, why didn't you turn in? I'm like, oh, no, we're at Chartwell tonight. And then my son says to me, he's like, you know, Chartwell's a good church, but it kind of smells like old people's khakis. And I honestly don't know what that really means. You know when you're a parent and you just don't want to ask the follow-up question because you're really concerned where it could go. So if you're here from Chartwell, we love your church. I don't think it smells like old people's khakis. But welcome. Tonight is a night for us to share in singing songs together, to tell the story of Jesus' birth, to laugh, to celebrate, just to spend time together as a church community and extended families. Many of you, maybe you're with us for the first time. My name is Matt. I kind of give some leadership to Reunion as the pastor, and we're so thankful to have you here. Welcome to Chartwell and to Reunion. Great to have you. One of the best ways to keep the party going is to invite the kids to participate, because it's always like a combo mix of, the parents love to see their kids involved, which is great. And extended family and all of us as a church family love to see the kids involved. And then there's always that healthy dose of, like, where could it really go wrong? And so what we're going to do is we're going to invite the kids up. They're going to help us listen and learn, and we're really excited about that. I don't know if the kids are nervous about this or not, but when they come in through those doors, I think we should give them like a huge round of applause to welcome them to the stage so that they feel like they want to keep being involved with church leadership. It's like we got to brainwash them now. So as they come in, so are you guys ready at the back? Oh, you're here. Oh, we are ready. Okay, can we please, are they all coming in now? Oh, can we welcome Maisie to the stage, everybody?
All right, so we're going to have a little play for you here. We're the Unrehearsed Theater Company, and we present to you the greatest Christmas picture ever. So we have the lovely Drew as Scoop Mackenzie. Where did Drew go? Scoop Mackenzie. This is your camera here. And we have the lovely Mary, Jesus, and Joseph coming up here to stand at their manger. All right. It's your camera. Yeah, stand behind it. One fine evening, Scoop Mackenzie, the press photographer, found himself in Bethlehem just at the time when the news broke. A savior had been born. This, he thought, could be the greatest scoop of his career. So he set on his way to a small stable where he found Mary and Joseph and a tiny baby Jesus. Wow, said Scoop. This will be the best Christmas picture ever.
This will be the best Christmas picture ever.
I'll be rich, he said.
I'll be rich.
And he rubbed his hands together and he did a little dance. He was so full of joy. He lined up his camera and was about to take the picture when he heard a shout. "Wait," said the crowd.
Wait, said the crowd.
"What is it?" said Scoop.
What is it? Said me.
"Shepherds," said the crowd.
Shepherds.
"Shepherds," said Scoop.
Shepherds?
"Yes," said the crowd.
Yes.
"You can't have a Christmas picture without shepherds." So shepherds came along with their sheep. "Perfect," said Scoop. Perfect. And he rubbed his hands together, and he did a little dance. He lined up his camera. He looked through the lens, but just as he was about to take the picture, "Wait," said the crowd. Wait. "What about the angels?" "What about the angels?" said Scoop.
What about the angels?
"You can't have a Christmas picture without angels," said the crowd.
You can't have a Christmas picture without angels.
So angels came and joined in the great Christmas picture. "Perfect," said Scoop.
Perfect.
And he had a little laugh. "Why are you laughing?" asked the angels and the shepherds. "Why are you laughing?" "Because," said Scoop, "this is going to be the greatest Christmas picture ever."
This is going to be the greatest Christmas picture ever.
But first, could you move the manger over a bit? I can't see all the angels. So they moved the manger over just a little. And Scoop lined up his camera. He looked through the lens. And just as he was about to take the picture, "Wait," said the crowd. Wait. "The wise men."
The wise men.
"Oh, yes, the wise men," said Scoop.
The wise men.
"You can't have a Christmas picture without the wise men," said the crowd. And so the wise men came with their gifts. Can you guys push right in? There's going to be tons of you. Go right ahead. Good job, Zoe. The wise men up here. So the wise men came with their gifts, and Scoop was trying to line everybody up in order. When he heard another "Wait," said the crowd. Wait. "Yes," said Scoop. "What about the donkeys?" said the crowd. "What about the donkeys?" said Scoop. "You can't have a Christmas picture without a donkey," said the crowd. So the donkey came. And it joined the Christmas picture, and they moved the manger over just a little more to make room. "This is great," said Scoop. And he did a little dance. And the donkey saw this, and the donkey did a little dance. And Scoop once again lined up his camera and tried to take another picture when he heard "Wait," said the crowd. Wait. "What is it?" said Scoop.
What is it?
"Reindeer," said the crowd.
Reindeer.
"You can't have a Christmas picture without reindeer."
You can't have a Christmas picture without reindeer.
"Of course," said Scoop. And the reindeer came. "Do I need anything else?" Scoop asked the crowd.
Do I need anything else?
"Yes," said the crowd. Yes. "You need mistletoe."
Mistletoe.
And so the mistletoe came and joined the great Christmas picture. And they nudged the manger over just a little more, so it was at the side of the picture. "What else?" said Scoop. "Stockings and an advent calendar," said the crowd.
Stockings and an advent calendar.
"You can't have a Christmas picture without stockings and an advent calendar," said Scoop. And so the stockings and the advent calendar joined in the picture. Scoop lined up his camera. He looked through the lens. He rubbed his hands together. And he did a little dance. "This is a great Christmas picture," said Scoop.
This is a great Christmas picture.
"But wait," said the crowd. Wait. "You're missing the Christmas sweaters and the tinsel."
You're missing the Christmas sweaters and
Of course, said Scoop. And the Christmas sweaters and the tinsel came and joined the great Christmas picture. Scoop lined up his camera again. He looked through the lens and he said, I think we're still missing a few things. So the elf and the Spider-Man and the princess all came and joined the great Christmas picture. Scoop took a look through his lens and said, we're running out of room. Away with the manger. And everybody gasped. No, said the people in the picture. Not the manger, said the crowd.
Not the manger.
Isn't Jesus more important than all of us, said the people in the picture. Isn't Jesus the center of Christmas, said the crowd. Scoop looked at the people in the picture. Then he looked at the people in the crowd. You're right, said Scoop. Jesus is the center of Christmas. He should be at the center of the Christmas picture. So they all helped move the manger back into the middle. Once the manger was back in place, they all looked at Scoop and smiled their biggest smiles. Scoop lined up his camera. He rubbed his hands together, and he did a little dance. Scoop Mackenzie took the picture and did yet another little dance. And all the people in the picture did a little dance. Even the crowd stood up and did a little dance. Because it really was the best Christmas picture ever.
All right, you may be seated. Well, this evening we're going to be reading from the verse, actually the chapter in Luke 2. But tonight we're actually going to be reading it from a different translation, and we're actually going to be reading it from the First Nations translation. So as we read it this evening, you're going to hear unfamiliar names and unfamiliar language, but the story will be familiar. And our hope and prayer this evening is that you actually listen intently. Not just listening with your ears, but listening with your hearts and your minds and putting yourself actually in the story. And maybe tonight, you'll actually hear and feel and listen to the story anew for the first time. And the reason why we're actually reading from the First Nations translation is that in this new season of reunion, we're going to be encouraging you, and we're going to be a church where we're going to be in a posture of listening and learning and supporting our brothers and sisters that are of First Nations peoples. And so we're thrilled that tonight, of any night, we can share their story and their language so that we can be familiar as a community as we go into the new year supporting them. So I'm going to be reading from Luke 2, and I've just got to pull it up here. Sorry. Okay. This is Luke 2, 1 to 20 from the First Nations version. When the time drew close for bitter tears, Mary, to have her child, the government of the people of Iron, the Romans, ordered that the people be numbered and put on government rolls. This happened during the time that powerful protector, Quirinius, was the governor of bright sun, Syria. All the tribal members were required to travel to their ancestral homeland to register. He gives sons, Joseph, and bitter tears, Mary, set out on a long journey from seed planter village, Nazareth, in a circle of nations, Galilee, to house of bread, Bethlehem, in the land of promise, Judea, the village of their ancestor, the great chief, much loved one, David. The time for bitter tears, Mary, to have her child was upon her, but no place could be found in the lodging house. So he gives sons, Joseph, found a sheep cave where it was warm and dry. There she gave birth to her son. They wrapped him in a warm, soft blanket and laid him on a baby board. Then they placed him on a bed of straw in a feeding trough. The word of the Lord.
That night, in the fields nearby, shepherds were keeping watch over their sheep. Suddenly, a great light from above was shining all around them. A spirit messenger from Creator appeared to them. They shook with fear and trembled as the messenger said to them, "Do not fear. I bring you the good story that will be told to all the nations. Today, in the village of much loved one, David, an honored chief has been born who will set the people free. He is the chosen one." The spirit messenger continued, "This is how you will know him. You will find the child wrapped in a blanket and lying in a feeding trough." Suddenly, next to the messenger, a great number of spirit warriors from the world above appeared, giving thanks to the Creator, saying, "All honor to the one above us all, and let peace and God will follow all who walk upon the earth."
When the messengers returned to the world above, the shepherds said to each other, "Let us go to see this great thing that Creator has told to us." So they hurried to the village of chief, much-loved one, David, and found bitter tears, Mary. He gives sons, Joseph, and the child who, just as they were told, was lying in a feeding trough. The shepherd began to tell everyone what they had seen and heard about this child, and all who had heard their story were amazed. Bitter tears, Mary, kept these things hidden in her heart and wondered what all this would mean. The shepherds returned to their fields, giving thanks to the great Spirit for the wonders they had seen and heard.
So I don't know if you're all feeling ready. Are you guys going to hang out here the whole time? Oh, it's okay. Pull up my pants then. I don't know what you guys have on coming up. For some people heading into the Christmas season, we just acknowledge that we're all kind of in different places. And that's okay. Some of us are so excited that this week is here, that Christmas is here. Some of you have been anticipating this week for a long time, excited to see family and friends. Some of our crew have already left to travel and reconnect with family in different places around the province. Some have come home. Whatever the case may be, some in this room are so excited that Christmas is here and there's like the break from work or school or rhythm and just some different time, complete with tons of food and movie marathons and sleepovers and matching jammies, whatever that looks like for you. I know there's a lot of people. Matching jammies, eh? That's a thing. Okay, so that is, for many of us, what this week looks like, and we've been excited about it. We also acknowledge that there are many people, or maybe some in this room, who this whole week just feels like, oh no, it's coming. We say this every year because we recognize that there's people in all kinds of different places, and Christmas can still be significant no matter where you're at tonight, what you're feeling emotionally, where you find yourself. We just want to acknowledge that there's room for all of us to consider this amazing, miraculous story no matter where you're at, and that God is present and with us no matter where we're at. And it's okay. Maybe you've lost someone this year through death or other reasons, and there's been broken relationships, and so the idea of holidays where it often equals family time just feels really difficult. So if that's you, then you are safe and welcome here. We're glad you're hanging out with us. For many of us, when we think of holidays and it equals family time, It means that we're having meals together, we're telling stories, we're all around the table. I don't know if your family is like my family, but there seems to be like 4 or 5 stories that always on rotation seem to come up. I don't know if it's like that for you. That inevitably when you're together over the holidays, the same kind of stories come up aimed at kind of teasing or making fun of someone. And it's all in good fun. It happens in my family. And so I'll give you an example. Let me give you a for instance here. So when I was in grade 9, this story comes up. I actually heard my dad telling someone this earlier this week. That's why I remembered it again. I'm like, oh man, he's just telling a stranger this story. So when I was in grade 9, I knew I was getting a little bit old for Halloween. Like at grade 9, you're probably tipping past the point where you should be like going door to door. But my friend and I said, let's just give it one more shot. Let's do it one more time. And so we decided to like really make it count. We thought instead of like just trying to be scary or just like wear clothes and throw on a mask because you don't care, let's really care. Let's try something. And for whatever reason in our grade 9 brains, we thought, let's dress up as women. And we thought this was like an amazing idea. It's the first and last time I've ever dressed up as a woman, but we took it very, very seriously. We borrowed clothes from friends. We borrowed makeup. I wore nylons. We did everything. High heels. We got totally dressed up. We made sure that to the best of our ability, like in grade 9, we didn't have any stubble or anything, so we still kind of had baby face. And I thought we looked pretty good. Like we really owned it. And so we just kind of started walking around our neighborhood, just having fun, you know, just like nothing bad, just having some fun, one last Halloween together. And when we came home after it, my parents were kind of chuckling and laughing, and they said, how did it go? And we were like, oh, it's fine. You know, we went up to a few doors, and we weren't really looking for the candy. We were more looking for the reaction of the people on the other side of the door. Like, how are they going to respond to us? Do they think we're women? Like, what's going to happen here? You know, this is like a grade 9 thinking it's like so funny. So, and my parents started smiling and chuckling, and we said, so what's going on? Like, their reaction to us coming back home seemed rather strange. They said, oh man, there's been a number of families coming to the door complaining out loud that there's a couple women of bad reputation wandering the neighborhood tonight. And it took us a little while and you know, it's a family-friendly evening tonight, so it took us a little while to register, and then we realized, like, we are those ladies. Like, they think we're up to more trouble than we definitely were. So that's one story. That always seems to come out. That's one of the stories that pops out. My dad was telling a random person that this week. I have no idea why that came up. I just kind of walked in on it, and he thought it was hilarious. I think the person on the other end was like, why is this dude telling me this story? Another one that often comes up, more with friends than our family, but friends whenever we're together, and we'll be with them. Actually, later tonight we'll be hanging out, and it probably will come up. It's like one of those stories that's on repeat. Sometimes when I travel, or often when I travel, Bobby and the kids will say, oh good, Dad's going away, now we can really do something, which makes me feel like I'm like the wet blanket who always wrecks everything. But this has happened a lot. I'll go away, do whatever I'm doing, like for travel, for work, whatever, and then I come back, something has changed. So I was trying to think of how many things have happened, because our friends often remind us, Matt, are you going away again? Because what's going to happen this time? So there was a couple trips, like there was one trip I remember I went away. We did not have a driveway in the front yard of our house. We lived downtown Hamilton then. And I was gone for maybe like 8 or 10 days. I think I was in Mozambique for that trip. Came home, like we have a driveway now. Like Bobby had like got crushed stone, like worked the whole thing, talked to the city workers. They cut a slope in the curb. She'd done the whole thing while I was gone. Another time I remember I was flying back in from somewhere. My friend Paul picked me up at the airport, and we're driving back to our house. We see some kids on the road like playing. And Paul's like, hey, is that your kids out in the street? And there was like this woman watching them. I said, no, that's not Bobby. That lady has a blonde mohawk. Like, that's definitely not Bobby. That was definitely Bobby. She had like long brown hair and then a blonde mohawk. There's been all kinds of ones. Simple things like the kids and Bobby building a dining room table while I was away, because I guess I said we shouldn't buy a dining room table, and so they made one. There's been all these different things. One of the also things has been, often I go away and we come home and all of a sudden we have a dog. Like, that's happened on more than one occasion. So sometimes when the kids really want a dog, they're like, Dad, when are you going away? Anyways, sometimes we have stories that we tell on a regular basis on rotation because they're funny and we like to poke fun at each other, or they have some sense of meaning, or they connect us to something greater than ourselves or outside of ourselves. So we have those individual family stories. And sometimes those will pop up this Christmas. You'll tell your stories. Just listen for it. Watch for it. The inside joke that only your family knows, and you're telling it around the table because it's like we're together. It's holiday equals family, and we're going to tell these stories. We also have these collective story, like a community story that we tell together. So one of them that we keep coming back to, and if you've been around Reunion for a while, it may feel like, man, you always kind of say the same thing, but I do it intentionally because I think it's really important for us to remember our story. Because it's what brings us together and gives us a sense of identity together as a local community of Jesus followers who are trying our best to figure out what that looks like. So sometimes we talk about, hey, do you remember when Reunion was in the living room at our house, at the townhouse, and we didn't even have a name, and we just were showing up and singing and having communion and trying to figure out what we were doing? And then do you remember when we went to the Moonshine and we started meeting there on Sunday nights? Hey, do you remember when we went to the Performing Arts Center and we started meeting there on Sunday mornings and it felt really nerve-wracking because we're like, man, what if nobody shows up? And then after that kind of grew and we felt like now we've been at film.ca for a while and now we're at Chartwell on a Christmas Eve on 2018. And some of you have entered the story at different stages and you have different recollections of what it means to belong to this community. And maybe this is your first time here and maybe you'll never come back, or maybe you'll come back again and you'll remember this night and think, hey, that's when I kind of met these group of people and we began to explore following Jesus together. But the collective story is so important. And remembering our story is so important. And Christmas is that story. For those of us who follow Jesus, this is our story that we tell. Sometimes we use the calendar year, right? We just know, like, it's Christmas, we tell the Christmas story. And I think we should probably talk about it more than that, more than once a year. Because this is a story that changes everything. This is a story that had been long anticipated and looked forward to by a whole nation of people for centuries. They were waiting and longing and expectant and wondering, God, when will you provide a way? With all this brokenness and turmoil and pain, there was a sense of expectation for the nation and the people of Israel to say, God is going to send what they called a Messiah, a rescue, someone to come and to change and to do away with all this pain and brokenness and provide this new sense of life and kingdom, they called it. So our story for Christmas, for all of us who say, we're followers of Jesus, this is kind of our now collective story. This is what it all means, this unlikely cast of characters. I love that the kids walked us through that, this unlikely cast, even Spider-Man, I love that. I don't know who was in the donkey costume, actually. That was amazing. But this whole unlikely cast of characters, and as we read it, these shepherds, Mary and Joseph, we spent some time this year talking about what it would have been like for a teenage girl to be invited by God to be a participant in this unfolding story. That she grew up in that culture, in that people group, longing for that expectant Messiah, and then to be invited by an angel to say, do you want to participate in this story? That her story and God's story now come together in a really unique way, and she says yes. And then her fiancé, Joseph, who thought, I'm kind, I will get rid of her quietly because I found out she's with child. He thought he was going to divorce her quietly and do the nice thing. He's visited by an angel, invited to take a new look at this, and he says, yes, I will join that story. This whole unfolding begins, which now for us feels like, yeah, it's Christmas. We tell the Christmas story. But for centuries, just think about this. For centuries and centuries, they've been longing for the Messiah. And then he shows up in the most unexpected way. The Creator who calls all things into existence now comes and takes on flesh. Eugene Peterson, in his translation, The Message, says, God put on flesh and moved into the neighborhood. I love it because it makes it feel so human. Jesus just becomes human. Think about these babies. Think about a baby and how self-dependent they are on their parents. So Jesus as a baby, the one who has created all things, who has all power and dominion, humbles himself and lovingly becomes a human being and now is dependent on his creation to look after himself. It's crazy. It just blows my mind. This whole idea of Jesus laying aside his rights, and this is a story that we're a part of. This is a story for us to tell and remember. There's no right way to celebrate Christmas. We all have our own ways of doing it. I remember when I was growing up, it felt like torture. So this is what Christmas morning would look like for us. We'd get up so excited. My parents would have some time. We don't do anything until this time. They would have this hard and fast rule, which we also did when we were parents with young kids too. Our kids hated it. But anyways, we had this Christmas morning doesn't start until whatever the time was. Then we get up, and we weren't allowed to open any presents. We weren't allowed to do anything. We had to have breakfast, family breakfast. And so we'd have family breakfast, and it was a fancy breakfast at our house because it started with a half a grapefruit. That's how you knew we're having a fancy breakfast. So you have this half a grapefruit with one of those maraschino cherries or something. And so we'd get through this breakfast, this fancy breakfast, and then we're like, now is the time to open some presents. no, it's not time. Now it's time to read the Christmas story. And my dad would get out the family Bible and we'd read it. Now looking back, I'm like, that was wonderful. It was amazing. But as a kid, it felt like torture. It's like all this stuff about talking about Jesus, about reading the story. Can we just get to? But this is our story. So there's no right or wrong way. But I would encourage you as families and as friends, whoever you're with, maybe it's New Year's Eve party, whoever your crew is of fellow Jesus followers, at some point, why don't you stop and say, can we just talk about this story? Can we talk about how amazing it is that Jesus became human to provide way and hope, and his love motivated him on our behalf? Just think about that. I want to read for you. It won't be on the screen because I want you just to listen. And if you want to close your eyes, you can. This is from John's Gospel. So in John's Gospel, as he's writing about the beginning, he doesn't include the birth narrative. He doesn't include what we just read from Luke chapter 2. He kind of gives a new framing for it. And in the First Nation version, it says this. It's called, or the subheading is, Creator's Word Comes Down. So I want to read this for you. This is from John chapter 1. It says, long ago, in the time before all days, before the creation of all things, the Word was there face to face with the Great Spirit. This Word fully represents Creator and shows us who he is and what he is like. He has always been there from the beginning, for the Word and Creator are one and the same. Through the Word, all things came into being, and not one thing exists that he did not create. Creator's life shined out from the Word, giving light to all human beings. This is the true light that comes to all peoples of the world and shines on everyone. The light shines into the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it or put it out. Into the wilderness of the land of promise, Judea, came a man named He Shows Goodwill, John. He was sent by the Great Spirit to tell what he knew about the light, so everyone could believe. He was not the light, but he came to speak truth about the light. The true light that shines on all people was coming into the darkness of this world. He, meaning Jesus, came down into this world, and even though he made all things, the world did not recognize him. Even his own tribe did not welcome or honor him. But all who welcome and trust him receive their birthright as children of the Great Spirit. They are born in a new way, not from a human father's plans or desires, but born from above by the Great Spirit. Creator's Word became flesh and blood, a human being, and pitched his sacred tent among us, living as one of us. We looked upon his great beauty and saw how honorable he was, the kind of honor held only by this one Son who fully represents the Father, full of his great kindness and truth. This is our collective story. This is what Christmas is all about. As the kids talk about all the things that crowd out, I just want to encourage you, again, there's no right way, but take some time. Over the next week, take some time. Maybe it's tonight afterwards with your family. Maybe it's Christmas morning with your kids. I don't know. That may or not be a good parenting move. I'm not sure how your family is. For us, that's not our best time. But take some time to talk about it. Talk about it in your own way. There's no right or wrong. Talk about what does it mean that Jesus became human, and that's what Christmas is about. This word we use called incarnation, that God became human. What does that even mean to you? What does that look like? This is a time of celebration and of storytelling and remembering our collective story. I want to encourage you to do that. I want to leave you with a prayer. It's from the Westminster Confession. It's pretty old. I want to read it out to you. It's a prayer that has been used for a long, long time for the church to stop and reflect on what Christmas means. And so I'm actually going to invite you to close your eyes as I pray. I'll have a moment of silence and stillness, and then I'm going to read the prayer, and then the band's going to lead us through a couple more songs. Let's pray. Eternal, Almighty God, how did your hands that flung galaxies into elegant orbit become the awkwardly uncontrolled hands of a newborn? How does your eternal being get inseparably woven into the time-bound humanity? While the how of your incarnation widens my faith, may the wonder of why you've done this for us bring deep joy today. So God, we pause in this moment as a church, as friends in this room, as extended family, with a sense of awe and wonder, doing our best to remind each other of what this story is all about and why it's so important to us. So we celebrate, Jesus, your birth. We celebrate the hope we have because you came and became human. The Word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood. Jesus, in this moment, we worship, we listen, and we respond. This was the answer to centuries of waiting, of expectation, of longing, and then you show up in a way that no one could have imagined. So Jesus, we see your love and humility, your sacrifice, and we say thank you. We celebrate this Christmas season with a renewed sense of hope and optimism because of what you've done for us. Jesus, we worship and we pray this in your name. Amen.